Hey guys, happy Thursday, happy evening time. So yeah, tea times is this evening and something that I've thought about doing before too, doing it in the evening. So we'll give this a shot, see how it works. But I'm happy that you guys are all here. Thank you guys for joining. And hey Veronica, Victor, how are you guys doing? I hope you guys are doing well. Hey Hugo. So I'm excited to have this person come on, and there's so much to share and to talk about. And let me just have him on. Let me see. Let me see if I can add him. Hugo. Okay, send the request. Hey, Hugo.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
That's good. I am so stoked and excited to have you here, and it feels like I already know you too, and I was looking forward to it. And you have such a bright spirit.
Hmm,
And last night I was talking to my partner about having you on here, and I'm like, oh, he has like this spirit or this energy of somebody with so much wisdom, so
thank you for
much
that
wisdom.
reflection.
And I've seen your videos, and I've seen your live on Efrain, and even right now as I'm talking about it, like I get chills because you show up to this space with other men how I'm sure so many men wish they could have as a father. And I
Hmm.
think you really do embody not only like that masculinity, but that fatherhood energy that so many men desire, like that love. So there's so much to just to share and say, and I'm sure I'll keep like adding to it as we keep going. But
Absolutely.
how are you?
Oh, just grateful to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. For me, every time I get to sit in a space like this and share space with someone like you, it furthers my journey inward,
Mm,
and I'm able to embody things in a different way because I get to say things from a different place than the last time. So I'm just grateful and thank you for doing what you do and bringing this forth. It's important to me to get this out in a good way, and so people can, for me, for the longest time, I thought I was by myself. I thought I was the only one going through it, and finding other brothers and men that look like me that are going through it was so important to my healing journey.
yes.
And so, if I could do that for just one person, then I'm grateful to be able to do that because so many did it for me and
Yes.
saved my life.
Yeah.
And that's not that's literally they saved my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's such an honor to have you on here.
Hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why I was also so gravitated to have you on for that same space of sharing space is also giving that message to other men who are watching to let them know, like, hey, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to be alone. And whatever trauma or whatever abuse that you've been through, somebody else has also been through it. And kind of like I shared in my story, I don't know how the experiences of saying like you're on the other side or you've been through it and you've walked through it, but it's also showing another male like, hey, there's this whole other way of being, or there's this whole other thing or experience or space to be, rather than pain or you know.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. It's like they say the pain pushes until the vision pulls. And
Mm,
for me, trauma pushed me into a lot of healing spaces. But now what I'm finding is that the grace is pulling me into a different place. And to
mm,
be able to go back and look at these traumatic events in my life with gratitude,
mm,
I never thought I would be able to say that because it was such a traumatic experience. But to be able to be look back and say, man, without that peace, I wouldn't be sitting here with you.
yeah.
Without that peace, I wouldn't have my family, the family that I have. So it's
Yeah.
this gratitude that comes in and slowly starts getting louder and louder, louder and
Yeah.
louder, and it starts drowning out the other voices because the other voices don't go away. They're there.
And
They're
he's still
constantly there.
there,
Oh yeah, oh
present.
yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah. And for the longest time, I thought at some point they would leave. And that was a big learning for me that no, they stay because without them, the light can't exist. And so there
Mhm.
has to be both
Dark and light.
dark and light. And the feeling sometimes for me, I feel so deeply.
Mm.
And I can tell you like what depression tastes like. I can tell you what
Mm.
depression feels like. I can tell you what loneliness feels like. I could tell you, like, I could describe that to you to a T. And
Mhm.
at 45, for the first time in my life, I could start describing to you what gratitude looks like.
Mm.
Like, I could start describing to you what unconditional love looks like. And
Yeah.
that for me was a huge bridge to cross because as much as I can feel the pain, now I could start celebrating myself and celebrating those around me. And I never thought that would be possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is. I mean, it is. It is. It is possible. And it's one of those experiences that reminds me every day how fortunate I am to be here, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like tears.
Yeah. Oh, it's real. This is real.
Yeah.
This is this is the real. Like, you know, this is where it gets like the human piece meets the spiritual piece, and that coexistence happens,
Yeah.
which at times I didn't think was possible.
Yeah. Which I kind of want to take a space to kind of like honor that, like honor the journey, honor how you were able to be in this space now of finding gratitude and also, yeah, unconditional love.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that right there is, oof.
Something that so many people long for and
Oh,
desperately try to search for,
yeah.
you know?
Well, you know, one of the interesting pieces that came forward as I was moving through my journey, you know, like my sexual abuse happened when I was 6, and I, looking back now, I can tell you that that was the day that the magic of life ended for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
after that happened, life stopped happening for me, and it started happening at me. Like
Mm-hmm.
I fell into this survivor mode kicked in, where I had to survive. Every day became this churning thing,
Yeah.
and then you know, growing up and with my dad, who I love very much, and we've had some deep conversations around this. But he was a disciplinarian with the, you know, with a
Mm-hmm.
belt. Like
Yeah.
he would, that's the way he disciplined. He would hit us. He would hit me with a belt. And so having those two traumatic pieces take place between the ages of 6 and 15 created this survivor mode that put in place some behaviors that allowed me to get through each day
Yeah.
that as an adult I learned weren't serving me anymore.
Yeah.
So that was the piece about going back and the gratitude and looking at it because it got painful.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
to a little bit add more to that, right? Because I know it, coming on here, it's like, oh, I don't even know where to start. There's so much I want to share, and at the same time, getting that message out that you're not alone. And I
Yeah.
know you and I have talked about like, whatever flows is meant to be, which I
Yep.
totally love. So going to that journey, it's like you were sexually abused when you were 6, and you were continually being abused in another form until the age of 16.
Hmm.
Right. So
Yeah.
then those many years, it sounds like it was always like this survival everywhere you looked,
Oh yeah.
or from the moment you woke up until you went to bed, and
Yes.
maybe even in your sleep at that point.
Hmm.
Right. And what happened like at 16? Did it continue to prolong in a different area, or is that like,
Yeah. Well, at 16, at 16, I got bigger than my dad, so the beating stopped. I was like, "You're not touching me anymore, bro. Like I'm bigger than you. Like this is not happening." And
yeah,
that's when I set that boundary with him. Like we're not doing this anymore.
yeah,
Um, you know, the sexual abuse piece, it did something like it created this filter in my life that I saw everything through.
okay.
And
What do you mean
for
by that? You
yeah,
saw,
yeah, so for me it created this feeling of like always feeling dirty.
Okay.
like this feeling dirty. And as an adult, it manifested in me like lying, manipulating, not being truthful, like that dirty feeling that I got as a kid when it happened, it like
Yeah.
transmuted into these behaviors as an adult that weren't serving me anymore. But that feeling that I carried with me was magnified when I became a father.
Okay. Yeah. Very.
Kids in relationships have a way of magnifying and speeding
Mm,
things up.
yeah.
And for me, when I have my kids, I tell you, full transparency, like that affected me so deeply in ways I did not know until they were born, where I couldn't even
Mm,
hold my kids or want to shower them because there was a fear of touch. There was a fear of just
that's
being
right.
intimate with somebody in every different way. And I had to work through that
Yeah.
because, go ahead, yeah.
I remember seeing the live with Efrain, right? And you sharing how you were taking a bath or you were going to take a bath to your baby boy and you were like, no, like,
Couldn't
nope,
do it.
not going to do it.
Yep.
And it
And
made you realize or made you think, like, oh, there's something off here where he's my son. I should be able to, like, take him a bath and I can't.
and I can't. Because those were two, that was one instant. And the other instant was because growing up, I always said, I'm not going to be like my dad, right? The whole thing. And
Oh,
later you come to learn, what you resist persists, right?
yeah.
But I remember my daughter did something, and my first inclination was to go grab a belt.
Mm,
It was
okay.
like automatic. I didn't even think about it. It was like instinct. And I remember grabbing the belt, and this voice kicked in, and it was like, "Are you really going to continue this pattern,
Oh, wow.
or are you
Okay.
gonna, or are you gonna break this?"
Yeah. That's like a higher voice, higher self, like spirit saying, "Hey,"
It's like,
like
bro,
checking on you.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, what are you gonna do? And I remember having this conversation with myself, and I remember putting the belt down. And that's when this ancestral piece came in for me because I realized that I have an opportunity to break generational cycles that I have come through my family so that I don't pass it on to my boys.
Mm,
Like I have an opportunity here to break things and do things my father couldn't because he just couldn't. And my grandfather couldn't. And I get this opportunity now to show up so that this ends with me. And like that's my commitment in this work, in doing these talks and doing everything. Is like I'm willing to do whatever it takes so that it ends here. So they don't get repeated. And their kids don't repeat it. Because it's just passed on over and over again, just like my grandfather did to my dad and my dad's grandfather did to him and so on and so on.
yeah. There
And so
has to
that
be like that one person who's willing to do the work.
and
Yeah.
I and it's like
It's
accepting
it's just like one person, but
it's and
it's
it's this
yeah.
responsibility because you fucking feel so much and it gets so overwhelming sometimes.
Mm,
But that there's something in me that keeps me going. Just like
mm,
that 6-year-old kept going after being sexually abused. Just like that teenager kept going after being beaten time after time. Like there's something in me that keeps going, and that's all I can trust in. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it's just it's important.
Yeah.
That's what I tell the brothers I run into. Like we have a chance to change so much if we're just willing to feel and to
Yeah.
get in there and lean in. And it's okay. It's okay not to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because it's scary.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know this.
Yeah. It's okay. This is space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
it's time. It's time so my boys don't have to. And my mentor told me early on with my kids, it's like as a man, you're going to show your daughter the kind of man that she's going to be attracted to, and to your boys, you're going to show your boys how to treat women
Yeah. And how to show up as a
and how to
man
show up.
in a
And
different way.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
when I think about my daughter, like Like words can't even tell you how much I love her. Like love is not even like, it doesn't touch any
Yeah.
and the responsibility of like fuck, like how I treat her would dictate who comes into her space.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
on me. So
Yeah.
to have that awareness, it's like you're constantly vigilant. They're like there's no days off. And it's like
Yeah.
there's no
Kids
days
are
off.
very observant of their parents, so even if they don't talk about it, even if they're not expressing it, they subconsciously, just like how you're saying, they pick it up from their parents.
Just like
And
I
it's
did.
not till later,
Yeah.
right? Like I've been learning that too, where it's like, oh, it's because my dad taught me that, I can't say no.
Right.
Or because like getting in trouble is okay by a dude. Like
Right.
XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, Don Miguel Ruiz says it beautifully. He says, we take, for me, the way I took it was like I took other people's stories and made them my truths.
Mm.
And I took other people's thoughts about myself and judgments and made them my truths. And I've been living my life like that. I would say I'm 45. I found this path truly at 40, where the pain was so excruciating
Yeah.
that I had to find a space. Like I didn't even know what I was looking for, but I had to find a space to be able to release this. And what I learned in relationships, I've been married 2 times. This is my third marriage. And what I learned in relationship is my partner is not the one to hold this.
Mm.
I need to find, it is my responsibility to find other men who I can say those things that I can't say to anybody else. Feel
Mm.
safe, feel supported, and in return be able to do that for them. Like that's the healing piece that I get.
Yeah.
But my partner is not responsible for me like this. Like, no.
Yeah.
As the masculine, I feel this incredible urge and urgency to create a container for my family where they can explore. And I'm holding the container, but but also being flexible within that, especially having, 3 kids, 3 different ages. Like I have to be able to be flexible, and that flexibility for me comes from coming into spaces and being able to just share and fall apart.
Yeah. And I have a question with that too, like why not your partner? Why look for a group of men? What's so important about that piece?
The thing that comes through is like it's not for her to hold. And
Mm.
for me, all my traumas happen at the hand of males
Mm.
and males that look like me. And then I was told that I couldn't trust people that didn't look like me.
Yeah.
So the the depths that I had to go to needed to be held, or I found that it was important for me to be surrounded by men because I was so scared of men.
Okay.
Like you don't understand. Like the fear is real. Like when stuff goes down for me, when it went down like that, like I would avoid being with men. I was better being with friends with women
Okay.
because I
They
just
felt safe.
it was safe. But then that became messed up too because of this thing that was in my mind.
Yeah.
It was hard to keep boundaries and all that, but to be held in a space by men
Yeah.
who are doing the same work and are willing to go to the same depth and hold you in spaces that I can't even describe to you. Like it's the best way I could say it is like when you sit in ceremony with plant medicines and you have these experiences and you can't describe it's not even worth putting it into words because
You
it
just
doesn't
can't
even do it
sometimes.
justice.
Yeah. You also can't put it into words.
No,
Yeah.
the shadow work for me was that. Shadow work was ceremony. It was like I would dive in as deep as I could,
Yeah.
as raw as I could, and there was just something in me that kept me going back to those dark spaces,
Yeah.
you know. But
There's a
that needed
vision
to
as
be
you're saying that, like even going back to group of men, there's a it seems there's a vision that I get of like there's blocks and blocks and blocks, and being brought into that space with men, it seems like you literally shot through the blocks.
Yes.
Like that's the vision that I got right now, just a straight shot.
Because here's the thing, right? The fear of man for me was so real that I had trouble connecting with my own masculinity because I'm a man. So if I'm scared of a man and of a male energy, then
Yeah.
I'm scared of myself. And that was a big awareness because what I found was that where the physical and sexual abuse stopped, I picked up. And
Mm.
I was being worse to myself than they were because they stopped.
Yeah.
But I continued the emotional abuse on myself, the verbal abuse, the negative self talk, the porn, all those
Yeah.
behaviors that are not help, that in the long run don't help. Like all those things that allow me to numb out. Food was a big one for me. Like food to
Mm.
me was comfort. I would eat
Yeah.
12 donuts. I would eat three Big Mac. Like
Yeah.
it
It's
just
like
did
it.
something. It did something for me, you know?
Yeah. It's like something else manifests to kind of numb the pain out, right? Or numb the experience or numb that part of you.
Yeah. And food, it tastes good. It's very
It's a
gratifying
good
and
high.
it's a good high. And
Yeah.
then, sex is right there with it, that escape. But then what happened for me was these two great things, sex and food, that are supposed to bring so much pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
for me had a negative attachment to it.
Okay.
So food and sex became this thing where after food and sex, immediate guilt and shame.
Okay.
This cycle started happening. And
Mm.
so how confusing, it was so confusing
Do you
for
think
me.
that, like, I have a question too, like, do you think that the food and the sex also brought out more of that shame that you already felt?
Oh, hell
But
yeah.
it
Yes.
intensified because you were already trying to use things that you were trying to avoid it with?
Yeah. And that's why, when I said the pain pushes until the vision pulls, that's the pain
Mm.
pushing. It's like, all right, two Big Macs won't do it. Then you're going to eat four.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to watch porn. You're going to watch porn 8 times a day. Like, so it goes to that, for me, it went to that extreme. It went to that extreme because I needed to feel it to the level where that wouldn't work anymore. It got
Okay.
to the point where it didn't matter how much food I ate or how much sex I had, it wasn't numbing it anymore.
Mm, yeah. You know, and I've heard, like, stories too where they've shared that the pain is so heavy where they have no other option but to go inward, like to
That's it.
deal with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's either that or just not living anymore. And in a way, that's not an option, so they decide to go inward and do the work, do
And
the
that
use the shadows of what you're saying.
and that's the real for me. It gets to the point whether the real question became, do I even want to continue on this earth?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to get up one more day? Do I want to even take one more breath? And when you get to that point, nothing can get you out of there but going inward, because nothing out here has the answer.
Yeah.
And you go inside and you check in with yourself, and the thoughts are like, would anybody miss me? What the fuck? Like, I'm done here. Like, I'm good. I'm complete. Like
Yeah.
you start thinking that way, and then there'll be just one little glimpse, or somebody will say something to you that just shifts it just a minute, like just a little bit. Like, people don't know how many things they've said to me that just shifted me just enough to say, fuck, one more day is worth it. Or
Yeah.
I could do this one more minute. Like, so that's why you just don't know. You just don't know what you're doing for the other person in those interactions. Like, people didn't know I was thinking about killing myself some mornings, and they would say something to me. I'd be like, oh, like, they were nice to me.
Yeah.
Shit like that. Just, you know,
Like it does something big. Yeah, it has a
it
huge
does.
influence.
It does. It does. And
Yeah.
like, that's why I tell people, like, don't trip, man. Just be good. Be good.
Be kind.
Just be good.
Yeah.
And I have my days, but I'm grateful that now, I have my good days outnumber my bad days,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll
I'll take
take
it.
it.
I have a question too, going back a little bit to the trust, and because I know that's a video that I saw on your page too. You were talking to somebody else where you were like, the people that were hurting me were the ones that were telling me not to trust the world. But like, you're supposed to trust them. And I remember thinking, like, I had this question of like, if you were a kid, like, what does that do to you in terms of like confusion? In
Oh,
terms of like just even the perspective on the world of I can't trust anybody then,
yeah.
or even trusting words.
Whew.
Like, and I'm assuming, and you can totally clarify, this sounds like it's when you were a kid, right? 6 year
Hmm.
old. And that's when you're so gravitated to trusting your parents and you're more open to trusting strangers, and you're also curious, and it's kind of like what you're saying, like where it sounds like it shuts down your own magic. It shuts down that inner innocent little being of you.
Yeah, it does. You know what it did for me? At that age, I worked with kids for 15 years in social services, and we would always say, when kids don't have that ability to look around the corner, they're like so in the present moment doing things.
Yeah.
And but when I would work with parents, they don't have the ability to say, "Oh, my dad is upset because of work." If you get home upset, they think they're upset because he did something.
Uh,
And so for me, it internalized as blame. Like I blame myself for what happened for so many years.
mm,
Like he abused me because I was too weak to say no.
yeah.
That blame as an adult becomes shame and guilt. It became shame and guilt for me.
Mm,
But it's the same essence, it's the same energy,
yeah.
And then that blame put me into victimhood for a very long time where life was happening to me. I felt like a victim to life. Everything was
Did you
just
have
this.
like this sense of like God was against you, or
Oh,
the higher power, or
first of all, I was like, where the fuck was God when all this was going down? That alone is another journey.
okay.
I've had to rebuild my relationship with spirit
Mm,
in a way that I can connect with it, and it resonates with me because a lot of it was like, if there is a God, how could all this happen?
yeah.
That was my question for a very long time. And it wasn't until I did some very specific work around that where I was able to go back and look at every situation with the light of spirit on it, and kind of
Oh,
see it that way. And like,
yeah.
oh, there you were.
Like
Oh,
it's
there
yeah,
you were.
yeah,
Oh, there you were. That I was able to start rebuilding that inside of myself
yeah,
and really start trusting into that essence.
yeah. I've heard another similar story of sexual abuse and them doing like their inner work and going back and realizing like, oh, I see where you were at and you were actually protecting me.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Oh, well,
yeah.
yeah. It's like,
It's a real
wow.
thing. It's a real thing. And it wasn't until I did that work that I that my heart opened up to the possibility of being grateful for everything, being grateful for all, and trusting in the larger yes, trusting in this peace that,
Yeah.
because if I believe now that everything happens for a reason,
Mm.
this came through one of my ceremonies that I did. Like it was like, if you can't pick and choose, when do you trust me? She was like, she's like,
Yeah.
you can't be so.
Yeah.
She was like, you can't be selective. Like if you trust me, you gotta trust me with everything. And so that was when I was able to take another like witnessing the witness perspective.
Like an observer.
Yeah, and look at my life up to now and say, this was the plan. Like this needed to happen the way it happened, or
Yeah.
I wouldn't be sitting here.
Breaking
Oh,
breaking generational trauma.
exactly.
Healing. Yeah. The future generations and your kids and how they're gonna show up to the world.
Yeah.
And even
And
and even when you're doing these lives and when you're having these conversations, it's like you're bringing all of that in for the other men who've gone through similar journeys,
Hmm.
who feel so alone, even if they haven't gone through abuse, sexual abuse, it's still that energy of like, hey, you're not alone. Like
Right.
there's men who are loving, who care, who want to share their connection with like together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's important, to find a space to connect with other brothers.
How did you start like your healing journey? Like how what was like the highlight of your journey when you were like, I need to go in within myself? And even like to add to that is like, because I know you've mentioned getting to know your shadows, right? And celebrating them. What does that mean for people who've never heard of like inner shadow or like shadow work?
Hmm. Wow, I think for me it was the beginning of wanting to feel because I had numbed myself out so much. And for me, when I had my kids, there was this yearning to love, but I didn't know how to love. I
Yeah.
didn't know how to do it or what it was. All I knew was what I saw growing up. But I knew there was more to it.
Like there was a different way.
There was a different way of doing it. And my first P, I mean, I have to, Preston Smiles, he's amazing gentleman. I was in my barber's chair and he was on the TV. Again, it's one of those moments where you see something and it resonates. And I signed up for his workshop that he was having that weekend, and that was my first introduction to breath work, somatic release, um, what's it called, like all that type of different energy. I didn't know what it was. Like I was never, and so when I did the breath work, that took me to a place I did not know existed, which was that deep feeling, yearning, releasing peace. Like I didn't know that, um, like trauma was held by the body.
Yeah.
I didn't know trauma was
Right.
stored in the body. So when something, a movement or something, it releases, um, especially taking on the beatings, like my legs took on most of it. So a lot of trauma was held in my legs. So a lot of work around that. I didn't know what emotional intelligence was. Like I didn't know any of that. And
It was like a
that
whole
was,
other world.
it was a whole other world. And
Whole
that's
other
the way
world.
that my life has always been. I'm either in or out, I'm like this, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you want to know what it is? Well, let me give you a static dance. That was the first time I did a static dance. Like, move my body in a playful way and,
Yeah.
move your body like the fire. I'm like, what do you mean? Whatever. And
What
that's
did you think? What did you think like at first? Like coming in with not even knowing what it is. Were you kind of like, what the fuck is this?
no,
Or
I
even
went,
as like the masculine, like the type of energy that you had as a man, did you ever like judge it? Like
I was in so much pain that all I could do was go all in.
okay, yeah. So you
I,
were
wa-
ready,
I was ready.
yeah, to
I
try
was,
anything.
I was ready just to try anything. And that opened me up. And then when I found Sacred Sons, is when the shadow work started for me. And that was the deep dive of going in with other men. And when I arrived at their first weekend,
Hmm.
there was 150 guys at
Wow,
this
that's
weekend getting ready to do this work. And I remember driving in and I was so scared. I was looking around. Now that one I was scared. I was like, what the hell's going on? My body wanted to take off and run,
I could imagine.
but
Yeah,
but my soul
yeah,
knew it. I had to stay. Like there was a deeper me that knew I had to stay. And so I did. And then that took me on the rest of my journey, to where I am today. And I wouldn't change anything of it. It's been painful. It's been, I've, how can I say it? Like, it's been painful and it's been like the celebration of what was to what's becoming. And then to be able to look at my shadows, like all those things that held me back for so long, and to be able to shine light to them and bring this awareness to them and know that they're not me was huge.
Yeah.
So it's like this huge, to me, shadow work is like this taking a flashlight into these deep parts of myself so that the light can start spreading out and literally loving them to death. Just bringing them in and just incorporating them because
Settling. Yeah.
within that within that piece of loving your shadows comes the loving of my inner child,
Mm,
because those shadows were created to protect, for me, were created to protect him from any further injury. So now where I am today is this rebuilding my relationship with my inner child, with him, and reclaiming him
yeah.
and letting him know that I got him
Yeah.
and that I'm going to do what I need to do to keep him safe,
Yeah.
and so on and so on.
That's so sweet. Oh man.
Oh,
That's
it
so
is.
sweet.
I tell you, yeah.
Yeah, and like I've been through my own journey the last like 3 years with somatic therapy. And same like you, I did not know at all that trauma was held in the body. And I also didn't know that there was so much trauma that could happen as you're in the womb with your
Mm,
mother,
yeah,
or the first couple of months of you being into the world.
yeah.
And it was a lot of that work for me of because I was given up at like I think I was like 8 months, and I didn't realize that my body felt unwanted everywhere.
Mm,
And in that space, there was so much of lack of boundaries, like using my voice, like using sex for a high, like numb the feeling of unwantedness and all this stuff. And in that space, there was so much of going into those shadow parts of even the thoughts that I had subconsciously of, oh, if my mom didn't want me, like who is? And loving that part. Like,
yeah.
oh, I see that you're sad. I see that you're in pain, but hey, I love you. Like, you are
Yes.
very wanted.
Whew.
And sometimes I would get like images of like my little baby self and me, myself now, holding my little baby self and telling it, like, hey, I want you. And that's all that matters. Like, there's spirit right behind me, and spirit wants you to.
Yeah,
Like, it doesn't matter if your own mom didn't want you. It's okay. Like, she did at some point, or she still does, whatever the story was, right? But the universe wants you. These
yeah.
angels want you. Because I had this, yeah, I had this image of being born and being given up months later. But in that space, I was given up in that somatic therapy session was angels, and there was like higher power. And it's like, this is your experience. Like, this is for you to heal and for you to
Hmm.
share. And we love you so much. And it was so sweet.
Yeah.
It was a huge breakthrough in my therapy sessions. Like,
Whew.
yeah.
That's beautiful.
And what you're saying too resonates because even in that space, you see how all these little moments lead up to that breakage in your healing stage where and it makes sense looking back, like of course I'm not going to jump into this space as soon as I open up the door because it's scary, it's super scary, but it's like all these little moments of, oh, I'm going to try meditation here and there, or like I'm going to try breath work. We're all leading up for me to feel that depths of the loneliness that I felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
know.
it's like, yeah.
I started feeling that. Like I feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. And yeah, yeah. That piece of like you can only take others as far as you're willing to go within yourself stuck with
Yes.
me. That was told. I was expressed to me early on in my journey. And so it's like you can only help others as deep as you've been willing to go for yourself. Because that connection when you're doing that work, it can't be fake. Like it has to be, it's an authentic piece that comes through. And that same connection, I'm finding that I can only connect with myself as deep as I'm willing to go within myself.
Yeah.
I can't fake loving myself. Like
Yeah.
I can't fake telling my little boy, oh, he's good when I know when like it's not aligned. It doesn't align like that. So
Yeah.
I think for me, that's why it's always like, fuck it. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to show up. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, what?
Yeah.
I've been through
Yeah.
that shit. Like, I know what that is.
Like you've been the because it's also sounds and from my own personal experience, it's like because you've felt the depths of because I remember even in my therapy session, right? Like before we got into that deep part, right, where I felt the depths of the loneliness, I was like, well, I'm afraid to step into it because what if I keep being lonely? Or what if I step into it and
Yeah.
I'm gonna feel that pain or that loneliness for months and I have to keep doing these sessions and like feel sad every time we get out and just expressing these fears to her. And she was like, well, let's take a moment. She was like, every aspect of your life, you've been living from that pain. You've been living from that loneliness. So if
Yeah.
anything, you've already lived through it. And when
Yeah.
she said that, I was like, it seemed like I went back in time and I saw every single time I was lonely and all the unhealthy habits that I took because of that. And I was like, oh my God, she's so right. Fuck it,
Yeah.
let's do it then. Like,
Yeah,
let's
that's
do
it. Let's go.
it.
Let's take the ride. Let's go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
as you were saying that piece, the real piece that was there for me too was this cultural thing. As a Latino man,
Yes.
I wasn't supposed to share my feelings. If anything, I was encouraged to lock them up.
Yeah.
And growing up in the neighborhood that I did, like you don't show feelings. You don't show because it's a weakness.
Yeah.
So coming into this world, this piece where vulnerability is a strength,
Yeah.
where heart is a strength,
Oh
where
my God.
love is a strength. That for me has been the integration of my own feminine energy coming in.
Mm,
Because what I'm finding is the more I'm in touch with that feminine piece within myself, the more nurturing and loving I could be towards myself and others, and especially with my kids.
yes.
But that feminine energy integration is so sacred
Yeah.
that my masculine has to, like, for me, my masculine has to be receptive to it. Like it's this beautiful thing that's happening right now with me, where it's like a softening.
Mm,
It's like there's a softening and then a hardening, a softening and then a hardening, but it's becoming this malleable piece now, that I can kind of flex into and flex out, so I can
I
be,
just pictured a sculpture.
yeah, but it's like this evolving piece of art that's in me that's constantly showing me the way. Because that's for me, that's where my intuition is. Like when I'm in touch with the mother and with all that, like that's where my intuition and all that is in a line, and I can be present, I can show up. But when it's out of whack, then I feel like I'm everywhere. And so
Yeah.
that's the real piece for me right now, is like embodying the feminine,
It
doing my
is.
healing work around the feminine, and all that, because it is such an important piece for connection to source for me. Like it's
It
like
is.
that.
It
It's almost like
totally
an
is.
umbilical cord.
It's like finding the balance of
Yeah,
both and being
yeah,
okay with both. I
yes,
wanted to share with you too that like the masculinity and growing up and shedding your emotions and because you mentioned earlier how it's so important for you to show up because of your daughter and the way that you're showing up to her is the way that she's going to learn how to kind of I don't want to say like get rid of like men, right? But she's gonna learn her own boundaries and her own worth. So when men come
yes.
into her life, like she knows,
Hmm.
right? And one of the things that popped up for me right now is I remember growing up and my dad was a very macho man, and for him it was always like, "Why are you crying?" And my mom had the same energy. So I'm sure it's like part of the Hispanic culture where you just don't show emotions or feelings.
Right.
And I had to work through that too, where I heard it from my mom and my dad, so I cut my emotions very early on. Like, nope,
Mm.
I'm not gonna cry. Nope, I'm not gonna be mad. Like, I'm just gonna be gratitude, like grateful all the time. And when I found out that I was adopted or that I was given away, I had so much pain because as a kid, it felt like my whole world was falling. There was pain, there was confusion, like there were so many answers. And right off the bat, because of the different lives that I grew up in and the different life that I could have had, my parents immediately was like, why are you in pain? Like, you should be grateful.
Hmm.
Like, why are you sad? You should be grateful. Like, you have a roof over your head, you have this and this, cut it all off.
Yeah.
And same thing, like with this healing journey with my somatic therapist, it was like, oh my God, there's so much pain. I felt it in my pelvis, in my stomach.
Yeah.
And
Seiko.
again, it was going back to that release and that touching the energy and going back to like the inner child part of
Yeah.
myself when I found out.
Yeah.
So it's so great to hear that you're showing up like that because as a woman, like it's so true. Like all of that, a young child, a young little girl picks it up.
Yeah.
And like daddy is like their world, you know? It's like of course whatever they say is gonna go, even if it feels off in their body and they don't even know it. It's just like that's what daddy says. Like papi
Yeah.
dijo eso, so papi es cierto,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's required a lot of uh, unlearning
Yeah.
of my upbringing. I mean, there's no accident. She's my first. My daughter was the first one, and
Yes.
she brought about this energy of like preciousness and sacredness,
Mm.
like,
That
and
feminine
it,
energy.
yeah, yeah,
And
and it
I'm
just,
sure it's a very different type of feminine energy from like a wife or a girlfriend. Like
yo,
she's part of you.
it's like this. I can't even tell you,
Yeah.
like I understand the importance of my relationship with her at a level where it's like more is said without words. It's more about how I am and
Mm. Yeah.
and the energy and everything. So it's like it awoke this piece of me to be like, yeah, like this is a big responsibility. It's one of those things you carry with for me that I carry with me all the time.
Yeah.
With my boys too. It's like this constant reflection, and I mess up. I have my moments
Of
where I
course,
lose
we're
it, and
humans. Yeah.
and then that guilt and shame cycle wants to start, and I'm just grateful that I'm able kind of to stop it and be like, look, I get it. Like there's a different way,
Yeah.
you know.
Like you don't come in with this because I Hispanic culture, right? Where it's like this. I'm right because I'm the mom and dad.
Yeah,
Even
that's
if
not that.
the mistake is right there and it's present, they're still gonna say they're right.
Girl, you know how many times
It's
I'm like, I messed up. That's my fault. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's very.
that's awesome.
It's just we have that
Because they learn
dialogue.
too that mistakes is okay. Like they learn to be human.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm the piece that I'm learning with them even deeper is like it's not about the words, it's about showing up. Like, how do I show up? I could say I'm sorry 100 times, but if I continue the behavior, then that I'm sorry is worthless. But
Yeah. They know.
if I just show up differently, then that makes a bigger impact, you know,
Yeah.
with them and myself, and this relationship just keeps on building at a deeper level with them.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah.
yeah, oof.
Yeah. There's so much more I want to ask, but I know time's gonna be running out soon.
No, no, go ahead.
So
This is great. I'm enjoying this. Thank you so
that's
much for this.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining.
Hmm.
There's another question that I wanted to ask too is so would you say that you being into this space with like other men and like going through your healing journey and also healing your inner child and being there for your inner child, would you say that trust has been gained or is that something that you're still working on with other men or like where are you with trust?
You know what it's given me? It's given me a discernment to trust. Like for me, trust was a very like how can I explain it? Like it, trust has taken more shape. Like I can feel into people and be like, oh, okay, I know I could go to this space with you. I can go to this space with you. I can go
Yeah,
deep with you. So like this level of discernment has come in because I trust
yeah,
myself more,
yeah. That's okay.
because I trust my intuition more. And I know when it's time to walk away from things, and I know when it's time to stay with things.
Okay.
And sometimes I walk away from things that the mind is like, you should stay there, but my heart's like, I'm not feeling it.
Oh my god, yeah.
And
Yeah.
all my life, it was this like, oh, my mind says it's comfortable and I should stay with it and this and that. And I would rationalize it and I would stay in it for a long time and then realize, fuck, I should have left earlier.
Yeah.
Now it's like this inner intuition of like trusting my heart and knowing that if I go with this, either way, I'm going to get the medicine.
Your heart.
If I
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to leave, then I'm going to know I wasn't supposed to leave. But if I'm supposed to leave, then I'm going to know I'm supposed to leave.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what's coming in for me right now at 45 years old. Like I'm able now to tap into this
Hey,
piece of,
45 is the new 21.
yo,
So.
let me tell you something. Girl, I was like, fuck, boy. It gets me excited because I see some brothers coming into this work at 30, 22, 25. Like It's like that, like they're getting into him, like it's like
Yeah.
fucking it. And I'm seeing more brothers that look like me and all this stuff,
Yeah.
and being able to process our traumas in our native tongue is so important. Like to be able to process our traumas in Spanish and the
Spanish.
way they happen, just all that
Yeah.
is just contributing to this huge culture shift that is creating this, the culture shift that's happening. But within that is that self trust that's built, because you have to, for me, I had to break away from my culture a little bit.
Yeah.
I had to unlearn some of the things and trust it was okay to unlearn, and then trust what's coming in, right?
Yeah.
And it's happening at the same time. It's like this is leaving while this is feeling. So it's like this, the discernment for me is, I was so grateful for it because I can now feel into things and be like, oh, okay, she wants me to be on her life. Like I could feel into it and be like, yeah, this aligns. If it didn't, then I would be able to say no, thank you, no. But
You
you
can feel
know,
it. Yeah.
yeah, but you can start feeling into things, and some of the things that I have been with for a very long time are now falling, are now leaving my space, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Is there sadness with the journey? Like, is there sadness or grief
There's a huge
as
grieving.
you transition, right? Like you let go of so much, and
Yeah,
it's because I know from my own experience, like, oh, it's I've been letting go, and there's grief and sadness, but at the same time, there's also joy and excitedness and gratitude for what's to come or what's in front of me right now.
yeah, the grief is real, and then allowing myself to feel that grief, the loss of what's leaving, while embracing this unknown piece. The unknown is this other piece that I'm getting comfortable with now. It's like not even no. I don't even pretend to tell you what's gonna happen tomorrow. Like I don't even like I can't even begin. Like so many things have happened where it's just like if I'm available, they happen. If I'm not, then they don't show up.
There's yeah, so much more trust and
So
faith.
much more
Sounds like
trust,
it.
yeah. It's like so much more ability just to receive and just to be. And there's a forgiveness there about things too for me. Like forgiveness work was huge for me
Mm.
because of the judgments I had placed on myself growing up,
How
and
does that look like for you, like forgiveness? Or actually, even like, so talking about forgiveness, because I know that's a topic that a lot of people have struggle with stepping
hmm
into or like talking about. How do you go from, were you able ever to forgive the people who've hurt you?
yeah, so that was a big piece. So as I connected deeper within myself and in doing this work of going back and looking at things,
Uh,
I did a process where I went back to look at my relationship with my father and what happened. And I was able to tap into this the piece for him of like, how much pain must he have been in
mm,
that he had to hurt someone he loves so much?
mm,
Like to tap into that pain that he must have been in and not have the spaces like I do now to
yeah,
go and release what I'm feeling so my kids don't have to experience that.
yeah,
To tap into that pain and then to tap into the gentleman that sexually abused me and to be like, what must have happened to him that he felt that he had to do that to me at 6?
yeah,
Like I look at those two things, and if I'm trusting that things happen the way they are supposed to happen, that they were supposed to be in my life,
yeah,
and that was a very hard place for me to get to. And within that place, there's the forgiveness.
yeah.
There's the forgiveness of releasing that person energetically.
Mm,
It's not the act, because the act was fucked up. I'm sorry,
yeah.
but you know what I'm saying? But it's
So
forgiving
it's
them.
kind of like in the same space of holding space for both, where I don't know if you, I don't know how that, like, where, I don't know if it's like still holding space for maybe I'm still mad at you or like what you did was fucked up. But at the same time, like, there's forgiveness.
Yeah, like I could say what you did was not like
Yeah.
no, you know, but at the same time, like releasing them energetically from myself. And
Yeah.
when I did that, then I was able to turn that inwardly and start releasing the judgments of, oh, he did it to me because I wasn't good enough. My dad did this to me because I wasn't worthy of his love. So then those things start kind of pulling away.
Like the story of it too starts to fall away.
The story of it.
Yeah.
And then a new one comes in, and for me, I'm in the process of this rewriting piece of what is it, what does this Hugo want? Like, what does this Hugo feel? Like, how can this Hugo come in and live life in a way that is like joyful?
Mm. As you're saying that, I imagined, I get sometimes like these just thoughts or visions. As you're saying that, I saw you and then your little kid self. Like, how do we want to live life?
Totally.
You know, your 5-year-old self.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
How do we want to do this, and how do you want to go about it?
Yeah.
And at the moment, presently, I'm in this place of just being still and listening. The last 4 years have been a journey and a half. I've been places, I've done things, I've explored, and now it's time to come back in and like settle in and integrate all those things
That you've
that have
learned.
that I've learned. I went to Peru a year ago to sit with medicine in the jungle, and like that is still integrating till this day. Like some of those lessons that I saw then are like showing up now. So then I'm like, wow. So maybe some of the things that I learned last year still have some time, to
Integrate.
integrate.
Yes.
So I'm slowing it down, kind of honing in and just really gonna, go within again and see what's there for me to look at.
Yeah.
And move
Thank you
on.
so much, Hugo. Like, even just your journey, thank you so much for going in and for doing the work.
Thank you.
For doing the work and bringing your inner child back.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. Because it's not easy.
And
It's
you
not
too.
easy.
You too, like
Thank you.
I see so much of myself in you. It's like
Oh.
that the reflection is like the willingness to just do what needs to be done. Because
Yeah.
there's a higher calling, and the vision is bigger than
There is, yeah.
than that.
It's what you're saying too, where there is part of you that doesn't want to, right? But there's something higher than you taking over. And in that space, it seems like, I know from my own experience, it's like I don't even have a choice. Like I can't even talk myself out of it, and I'm in that space in front of my therapy session or when I use the plant medicine, it's like, okay, let's do this, and I'll witness the fear, but it's still something that I'm so called to do.
Yeah. The
And
surrender to it. That's another piece that's coming. That's multiple. We could talk all night, girl. Because then there's a surrender piece. That's a whole different letting go.
We're going to have another tea time.
That's like the letting go of the letting go. It's just like you gotta just do with me as you will. That's a whole
I
nother.
also love talking, and I ask so many questions, and I'm so curious. I'll keep like asking you.
Oh man, the plant medicine.
Yeah.
Is a deep one. Yeah.
Okay, so then we'll end it. But but how can people find you? Where can they like reach out to you? And we're gonna do another video, so at some point.
Just through Instagram. I'm not doing nothing specific. Like I don't, I'm just showing up, and if I could support somebody, I'm more than happy to do it, and just navigate these waters that sometimes gets choppy. But I'm just here. I'm just here, and if something resonates, reach out. If if anything, but I'm just I don't know how to say it. I'm just happy to be breathing.
Yeah.
Let me put it that way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Which is so sweet.
Yeah. The breath. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Before I end it, let me see, because I know people had comments and I didn't go through it. I'm always like so in tune. It says here. Let's see. Thank you guys for joining and for your comments and your presence and your waves. Super, super appreciative. There's Efrain. Thank you, Efrain, for also doing this work and showing up. Let's see. Susie said, I feel every single word he's talking about because I myself come from an abusive household. You're a king, sir.
Oh, thank you. Gracias.
Ibrahim said, breaking cycles, hermano. I love listening to your story, Hugo. Yeah, so
Love
sweet.
that, brother. We've been in it together.
Yeah, I've seen him on the videos too.
Yeah, we've done the deep dive.
So great. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. It
Gracias a
was
ti.
gracias. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
pues. I'm sure we'll connect again. Our paths will cross. Yeah.
yeah, we'll stay in touch.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay, much
Appreciate you.
love.
Gracias,
Tú
gracias.
también. Gracias.
Y buenas noches.